vegans and vegan curious, it's Margaret and welcome back to Mod Vegan. Today on Mod Vegan we're going to be discussing Tobias Leenaert's new book, How to Create a Vegan World, a Pragmatic Approach. But first, if you enjoy this video, do give it a thumbs up and let me know that you liked it, and also subscribe or like the Mod Vegan page on Facebook so you don't miss another great video like this one. If you don't know who Tobias Leenaert is, he has been a vegan advocate and activist for over 20 years. He's worked for a number of different animal rights organizations. He also founded the Ethical Vegetarian Alternative in Belgium, and that organization was one of the first organizations in the world to help create a vegetarian day in his city of Ghent. It's pretty exciting. They created a vegetarian day in their city to try and encourage people to try out vegetarian meals. Tobias Leenaert also started the Center for Effective Vegan Advocacy with Melanie Joy, who many of you already know her work already. And he's been involved in so many different projects, including Pro-Veg, which is a pro-vegan organization that tries to advocate for veganism around the world. So he has a long history of animal advocacy and of vegan activism. Tobias's work is not without controversy. He is well known as the author of his blog, Vegan Strategist, where he advocates a pragmatic approach, which is something that not everyone agrees with. And it's something that I'm going to be talking about here today, and that is kind of the bulk of what we're going to be discussing here today. How to Create a Vegan World focuses on a pragmatic approach to vegan advocacy, and Tobias explains why he takes that approach. He starts with looking at where we are in the vegan movement and what we really want. And this book is written primarily with ethical vegans in mind. It's written to that audience, but also with other audiences in mind as well. And he writes that we still have lots of work to do. Only about 1% of the population is vegan, and we also know that many of the people who go vegan don't stay vegan, so we have a huge task ahead of us. And that's what this book is written about. It's written about how to create a vegan world, and then it looks at a pragmatic approach to solving that problem. Pragmatic approaches to veganism often come under fire from ethical vegans, and that's because groups like the abolitionist vegans, kind of led by Gary Francione, who wrote The Abolitionist Approach, they tend to feel that veganism is a moral baseline, that we all need to accept that or we're not truly vegan, and the only way to create a truly vegan world is to change hearts and minds. And they believe that the only way to do that is through this very ethical approach where we try to change hearts and minds. Tobias takes a slightly different approach. That's what's presented in this book. It's also the idea that's presented on his blog, The Vegan Strategist, which is also rather controversial. I discovered Tobias about a day after I decided I wanted to be vegan. I had run across articles from Peter Singer, and that kind of led me to this effective advocacy idea. And so I was very interested in his blog right from the beginning. I loved The Vegan Strategist. It was interesting to me, and I always have found the idea that we need to change hearts and minds appealing. Obviously, we do need to change hearts and minds, but there are different ways to change hearts and minds, and the main way of doing it may not be by making veganism a moral baseline. In his book, Tobias argues that we need to allow every reason for going vegan, to allow all the reasons. And that's something that the abolitionist vegans are very much against. They don't want us to allow those reasons, because by allowing people to go vegan for the wrong reasons, we might be creating a more polluted, diluted movement that's not what veganism is really about. And you notice on this channel I do focus on the ethical approach, but that doesn't mean that I don't think it's okay for people to go vegan for their health or to go vegan for the environment. And I also know that that works, and that's something that Tobias suggests in this book, and it's something I've seen in my personal experience. My husband first went vegan for the environment, and he only later decided to go vegan for ethical reasons as well. And while it's absolutely true that the only reason to be 100% vegan is probably for ethical reasons, it doesn't mean that we don't need those people who go vegan for other reasons in the movement as well. So I think allowing those reasons is very important in order to build a greater movement, and that's because Tobias believes, and he presents in this book, the idea that we need to achieve a tipping point. If we want to create a vegan world, we need to get enough people seeking out plant-based options for whatever reason, and once we do that, we have a real chance of creating a truly vegan world. I really enjoyed this book. I loved the discussion of the creating a vegan environment, how we can do that. And by that, we mean an environment that supports veganism. When you say go to a cosmetics counter and all of the options are vegan because that brand has chosen to adopt vegan principles, and maybe not even vegan principles, but they've just decided that those cosmetics are better for your health, that they're easier to make, all those kinds of things, that becomes a way to make vegan options the default instead of something that is out of the ordinary. And it's the same as true when it comes to milks and things like that. If people choose plant-based milks because that's what they enjoy, say they are lactose intolerant, and they discover vegan options in that realm, they may choose other options as well. And as those things are becoming more and more popular, and we're seeing them more and more, like with the video that I just did on Tesla, and Tesla's decision to make all of their vehicle interiors vegan, that decision was made partly for the environment, partly for manufacturing reasons. You know, the vegan alternative happened to be the best alternative. They were having the most success with it. Customers liked it the best. Those are reasons to do that, and it doesn't always have to be coming from an ethical framework. It doesn't always have to be an ethical decision. I like that idea, and I think that creating this vegan environment through vegan businesses and things like that is a wonderful strategy for helping to turn the world vegan. I do disagree with Tobias somewhat when it comes more to how we should define veganism. And I understand that some people want to change the definition of veganism, that they want to make it a little bit more loose so that more people can call themselves vegan. For me personally, I think that we should leave the definition of veganism the same, that we want all avoidance as much as we can of animal products as far as is practicable or possible. We all know that there are certain things that you can't avoid, like walking on asphalt, things like that. There's lots of products, you know, if you ever use transportation that it comes from biodiesel that contains animal fats and things like that, some of those things are not avoidable. But overall, I think that we should be retaining that idea that it's about the avoidance of animal exploitation as far as possible and practicable. I think that the Vegan Society made a great definition a long time ago, and we don't need to mess with that so much. So while he suggests perhaps opening up the definition of veganism, I wouldn't change the definition, but I do think that if people consider themselves vegan, it should be up to us to make our lives as vegan as possible and not worry so much about the transgressions of others. I do think that is more important. You know, there are the gross transgressions, there are the minor transgressions, and it's up to each one of us how we're going to decide whether something is worth calling out, for example, here on YouTube, or if it's not. For example, I made a video talking about Kat Von D, and that I wish she would make some of her eyeshadow palettes, her older eyeshadow palettes, vegan, that she hasn't made vegan yet, but I've noticed all of her new palettes are vegan, and I buy her products, I wear her products, wearing her products today. I wear those things because I think it's great that she is doing the right thing, that she is trying to make a difference in the world, and I want to support that. I want to support more brands offering vegan cosmetics. And so we don't want to allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good. I do think that in order to create a vegan world, we will have to do some things that may not be perfect, and that's in our personal lives, that's in our broader lives in public. There are things that we do every day that are not perfect, and getting hung up on that idea of perfection does alienate people, and doesn't mean you shouldn't try to do your very best, but it does mean that we shouldn't allow that perfect to be the enemy of the good. I also think it's interesting that we tend to say that people who are more pragmatic are not as likely to succeed, or they're not as hopeful or anything as someone who's the perfect, for example, ethical vegan. And I kind of disagree when it comes to this divide between pragmatism and idealism. I genuinely think that pragmatists are a bit more optimistic. I'm a pragmatist. I want to create a vegan world. I want to create a perfectly vegan world as far as is possible or practicable. That's what I want to see. And I don't worry so much about people being perfect vegans. I want to see that vegan world, because when veganism is the default option, when we can, you know, buy Tylenol, for example, that doesn't have gelatin in the capsules and things like that, or stearic acid or whatever it is that's in Tylenol, when we can do that, then that is the way we need to be working on achieving that rather than making ourselves perfect in the meantime. I think that our goals need to be that perfect vegan world, really. And I'm much more optimistic about achieving that. And I think Tobias actually is too. I think this is an optimistic book, and I recommend it for anyone because, he does talk about things like business and enterprise and how we can use those things to help create a vegan world, the way we can do effective advocacy. All those things are really important. Political lobbying, things like that, because there are certain vegans, Gary Francione comes to mind, who really don't want to do those things because they want to focus on converting individual people to veganism in the hopes of making veganism a bigger thing. Rather than really creating a vegan world, they want to create many more vegans in the hopes of one day having a completely vegan world. And it almost reminds me of a religious approach to veganism. I do think that there are some parallels between abolitionist veganism and religious conversion, because the idea is converting people and making them purely vegan, making yourself purely vegan, being a pure-hearted vegan. And I don't think that's very effective. And that's what I really like about this book, because people don't always do things for the right reasons. And it's much better to get people to do the right thing for the wrong reasons, in my opinion, than to have them struggle to do the right thing and give up for the right reasons. And I do think that that's very important, because each one of us can make decisions in our daily lives that will contribute to a vegan world without being perfect. And that's something I think to keep in mind. Does that mean we need to water down the definition of veganism? I don't think so. But I do think that it means looking at the world in a bit of a different way and focusing on creating that tipping point rather than making everyone perfect right away. All in all, this is a book that I really recommend. I really enjoyed it. I'll be putting a link to the book in the description box below. It's available on Amazon in both digital and hard copy. You can get either a hard copy to read at home or a digital copy. I read it on my Kindle or my iPad. But it was a great book. I really enjoyed it, and there aren't that many books like this. There are very few books that really look at practical steps. There are a few. I did enjoy Gary Francione's book. I did a discussion about that book with Isel Mazard. I will put a link to that discussion here. But I really enjoyed that book as well. And even though they're very different approaches, I think both are legitimate approaches for different people. And that's something where I'm sure probably both Tobias and Francione would certainly disagree with me about that. But I think different people will take different approaches. It's one of the reasons why I support direct action everywhere and people who are involved in direct action everywhere, because they are a nonviolent organization, which is very important to me. And even though they do things that are not necessarily easily palatable by the general public, I think that they help to plug in people and get people involved and feeling like they're doing something in a way that is generally beneficial to the people involved. I think that that is beneficial as well, because not everyone is going to do the same things. Not everyone is going to be lobbying City Hall. Not everyone is going to be creating a YouTube channel. Some people have a hard time talking with people, and I think sometimes expressing your frustration can be a good thing too, and it's part of the democratic process, and I understand that. So that's why I don't necessarily feel that there's only one way to do this. And I do understand where abolitionist vegans are coming from. It may not be the approach that I choose to take, but I respect that approach, and it's part, I think, of this movement towards creating a vegan world. Some of us have more black and white visions of the world, and if you have that view, then you probably will be attracted to abolitionist veganism. I am not. I am far more pragmatic and progressive in a slow and methodical way. I think that making a vegan world gradually is probably what will happen, and it makes me more optimistic about the future of veganism, and I think that's important too. You need to take the approach that will allow you to be able to hold out for the long run and remain excited about veganism. The fact that 84% of people who choose to be vegan or vegetarian quit eventually is a problem, and I think that that problem is partly stemming from the fact that people take approaches that do not suit them as individuals. We need to find the way to do our activism or our advocacy that works for us, and we need to find the reasons that work for us. And as advocates, we need to allow people to have those reasons and allow those people to have different approaches. This may make me an apostate in terms of abolitionist veganism, but I think that it's important to allow those differences of approach, and it's an important part of creating a vegan world. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do let me know what you think in the comment section below, and also do give this video a like, and like it on Facebook. If you watch videos on Facebook, if that's an easier way for you to watch these videos, go ahead and do that as well. And also, if you're watching them on YouTube, be sure and click that bell icon so you're notified when new videos come out. I have new videos every Wednesday and Saturday, and I would love to see you back here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.